officially welcome all of our guests that are attendees and our panelists that we have with us today. My name is Jason Johnson. I am with the WhyTry organization, and we are thrilled to be hosting this webinar on the really important topics of equity and hope, and just thrilled to have some really impressive guests as panelists today to talk about this, and really excited to be able to consider all of these individuals friends of our organization as well, and it's just been really fun. So what I think I'd like to do, I'm going to introduce all of our panelists, give some brief introductions, and then I want to get the conversation going pretty quick. So my name is Jason Johnson. I'll serve as moderator here. And my goal as moderator is really kind of to stay out of the way and get our panelists talking about these important topics that I know are really, really important to all our attendees that are logged in. So welcome everybody. A couple quick logistical things. This is being recorded, and we'll have a link available by this evening that should be emailed out to you so that you can share this, because I think we're going to cover a lot of really helpful information. As I mentioned, my name's Jason Johnson. I'm a school psychologist, come from public ed, been with the WhyTry organization for about 5 years, and I am thrilled to be able to be party to this discussion. So our panelists that we have today, we have with us Ms. Miranda Beard. Welcome. Ms. Beard, former president of the National School Board Association based out of the DC area. In her role as president and NSBA director, she traveled the US as a leading voice and advocate for equity and excellence in education for more than 50 million children in our nation's schools, represented 90,000 school board members on a national education tour to Central and Western Europe. Done some really impressive stuff, career the last 20 years, serving in leadership and helping out in the world of education in a really significant way. Welcome, Ms. Miranda Beard. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Jason. I call myself a recovering school board member.
That's fun. Well, we're thrilled to have you. Next, we've got Mr. Early King, a good friend of the organization. He's currently the principal at Youth Connection Charter School, YCCS, in Chicago. Under his leadership, YCCS is committed to providing youth between the ages of 17 and 21 that are undercredited and overaged with culturally relevant and rigorous academic learning opportunities to enhance their reading, writing, and math skills, as well as social growth to seek transition and achieve post-secondary success. And he's had a really awesome career as well. He worked with the K-12 online education organization and is really an expert at relevance and engagement. And he's done some awesome stuff kind of combining his career knowledge there at YCCS. My understanding is that you guys are averaging like a 94% graduation rate, which is just awesome. Like huge round of applause for the work you're doing there.
Thank you.
And then last but certainly not least is Dr. Damian Sweeney. He's currently serving as the program coordinator for comprehensive school counseling at the Kentucky Department of Education, where he works alongside school counselors to equip them with best practices, oversees publication of the Kentucky Framework of Best Practices for School Counselors. He's contributed to guidance on how districts can facilitate conversations about race-based stress and trauma for districts and schools within Kentucky. And also recently, huge congratulations on this, had his first publication in the Ask a magazine titled Stand Up, Stand Together. Now is the time for school students to take a stand and fight for social justice and equity for Black students. Welcome, Dr. Sweeney. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so what I wanted to do just to kind of kick it off is maybe ask you all to briefly start. So we're going to be talking about equity and hope. And I wondered if you could all briefly tell us just a little bit about some of the recent equity initiatives or ways that you've been addressing equity within your field. And I was wondering maybe if we could go in this order here, first from Ms. Beard, next from Mr. King, and then from after Mr. King, Dr. Sweeney.
Thank you. This is such an honor to be on this webinar today with such esteemed colleagues in the field working hard and working diligently for children. And I want to thank everybody that's tuned in right now to this webinar, because I know your heart and your passion is to try to do what's right and best for children. And as I've traveled across the United States before COVID-19, now a lot of things are being done online. I noticed that leadership, whether they were counselors, administrators, principals, in the field, the boots on the ground, there's a passion there, but some people just don't know what to do when it comes to equity. So what I would do, I would try to bring in some best practices, some ideas that have been noted across the country that has worked well in many school districts. Whether it's using high school students to tutor children at the elementary level to help them with math skills or English skills, and then pay those students a stipend. Just a thought, just an idea. Because sometimes leaders will say, well, where am I going to get the resources from? I don't have the money. What am I going to do? So when we sit down at the table, which is the main thing that I focus on, getting all the voices together to sit down at the table, all the stakeholders, whether it's business leaders, the administrators in your district, whether it's counselors, whether it is children, people that are advocates for children, whether it's the Department of Education, all these people coming together, sitting at the table, talking about the issue of equity. And when I think about equity and I talk about equity, equity is really just doing what's right with the resources that you have to make sure all children are taken care of. Because I know that if we don't do it on the front end, then guess what? We're going to have the issues on the back end. See, what we do now will determine the outcomes for the future. And so those are the things I focus on when I'm out there talking to leaders across the country who are focused, but they don't know how to focus some of the skills and the abilities that they may have in their district. But they need all the voices at the table to tell them what the needs are. And if you don't get those voices there, how will you know? It's almost like trying to hit a moving target and you never hit it.
Thank you so much. Mr. King, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on.
Well, from the school level, we have allocated money to personal development, professional development, and conferences this year. So additional fundings were added to that line item to allow the staff to go out, get training, other than what we provide on site. On site, we do monthly trainings, culture and diversity trainings. That's mandatory for all staff. They can attend it asynchronously or synchronously. Saying kind of loud. So that's one on a local level. Being a social justice school and a career pathway school, way before the protests and the riots, we were doing this like 3 years ago to teach our students about themselves. We are 60% African American, 35%, 38% Latinx, and then the other was other 2% is other. So this is something that we wanted our Black and brown kids to learn about themselves. So equity and who am I is part of our theme. It has been a part of our theme for the last 3 years. So CPS is also providing training for schools for diversity and sensitivity. And it's optional, and those are things that's extended to everyone on my team on a monthly basis. So that's what we're doing locally, and that's what we're doing in-house.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Sweeney, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, so again, Jason, thanks for having me. I'm really, really honored to be here. We've been doing just a lot of presentations throughout our state, within our agency, within the Kentucky Department of Education, and nationally. And through those presentations, I've been trying to really equip school counselors, different school personnel with tools that they can use to have courageous conversations about equity and about race and about racial trauma. Also talk a lot about the racial trauma lens, which all of us should be considering as educators. there's so much. Something that I've also been thinking about a lot lately is equity walks, data equity walks. So how can we look at the data as a school team, as a school leadership team, as a school staff? How can we look at the data and then create solutions in regards to that data? But then how can we get our students to look at the data and be part of those solutions as well? So it's really trying to equip the people that I serve to have some of these conversations, to make sure that their voices are being heard. Sometimes our friends don't feel like, you know, they have a seat at the table. And it's my job to make sure that they know that their voice is important, their voice matters. They are a school leader, and I'm specifically referring to school counselors, and that they have to have these conversations. I'm also really trying to tie everything to school counseling ethical responsibilities. You know, so we have this ethical responsibility to fight for social justice, and I think that's the coolest thing about our profession. So that's just a little bit about what I've been up to. I think the last thing I would talk a little bit about is, you know, I mentioned the being trauma informed, the racial trauma lens. So really talking about the learning brain versus the survival brain, and also talk about how Black culture right now, Black and brown students, our communities are just really struggling. And many of us have that survival brain right now. We're kind of in that survival brain right now. So what it's going to take for us to be equipped to move towards that learning brain is for people to show us unconditional regard and love. So a bit about what I've been up to.
Awesome, thank you. I think everybody here is excited to hear a little bit more about everything you've just described. So I was wondering if maybe let's just start digging into it. And I think one of the first places to start that might be helpful is if you could talk a little bit about what some of the obstacles are that make it difficult for organizations and institutions to do a better job of promoting and working towards equity. And these could potentially be systemic, individual, or other obstacles. But maybe if we could hear from Dr. Sweeney, then Ms. Beard, and then Mr. King after.
Yeah. So one obstacle that I'm constantly seeing within education is that people may be a little bit fearful of what other people are going to think. So having some of these courageous conversations, making sure that their Black and brown students are a priority, making sure that equity is a priority is really tough because it hasn't been such a focus in some of our communities. So that's been an obstacle. I would also say that really taking a hard look at the data. You know, I keep going back to the data. If we have our schools and our districts just focus on 3 pieces of data, right? What does the attendance data look like for our students? How do our Black and brown students fit into that data? What does the behavior data look like? What's the course passing data look like? And within course passing, you can be talking about graduation rates, you can be talking about state assessments, retention rates, et cetera. But if you just look at that data through a racial equity lens and say, you know, are there disproportionalities that we need to address? Are there equity issues that we need to address? And be willing to boldly confront those issues. I think that you're going to go far. What I see is that people at times, districts at times, or schools at times, are unwilling to have those critical conversations.
Awesome, thank you so much. Ms. Beard.
I wanted to share my screen for just a moment, if I can call this up.
Yeah.
Just to share a slide with those that are with us today. And so I'm calling this up because there's something I wanted to share here concerning understanding the difference between equity, looking at things through the equity lens, and then looking at things in terms of equality. When you look at this, it says equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. But when you look at equality, It is the state of quality of being equal. See, we can provide equal things for everybody, but it's just that in some schools, some children may require more. And we have to be fair as leaders and impartial to make sure that happens. For example, if I have a school that has 10 counselors, another school that has 10 counselors, but I understand that school B needs 12 counselors, how do I move counselors without school A feeling as if I'm taking something away from school A to provide what is needed for school B? Because I don't have additional monies or resources, but I can shift resources to make sure all children are fairly taken care of, okay, without people feeling like something is being taken away. Look at the next section of this slide. It says that equity involves treating each individual according to his or her needs. But equality says it involves treating every individual the same manner, irrespective of their differences. So I can't come with a size 10 shoe and give it to all the children, because guess what? A size 10 shoe won't fit everybody, okay? So I've got to find out what fits and what works to help these children be successful in life. Look at equity again. It considers individual needs of people, okay? That's what equity does. But equality says it does not consider needs and requirements of people. So understanding the difference between equity versus equality is very important. So when you look at this slide, it says equity versus equality versus equity. Everybody has the same thing in terms of what they need. But as leaders and those that are in the field and looking to address equity issues, I like the third slide, part of this slide the best, because in this third image, it says all three can see the game without any supports or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. In other words, the systemic barrier has been removed. And that's what we have to look at, finding those best practices and those things that are actually working that we can share to help people get rid of those systemic barriers to equity in order for people to be successful.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. King.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with Miranda on this. I think understanding is one of the biggest gaps that we are faced right now. And part of understanding is, being open-minded and courageous enough to say, I don't know. So just like, Damian was saying, you got to be able to have courageous conversation. And I think it's a lot of fear around having those courageous conversations. So how do you broach that, when you have people that's fearful about, talking about it? So I think that's one of the biggest obstacles that we are facing. From a school level, I think that the resources or lack thereof, prevent our students when they leave, YCCS West and go back to the home environment. It prevents them from being successful. And their success is longer term. And what I mean by that is, we build them up in school and then they're faced with, seeing, their, brother get shot or seeing somebody get molested or, snatched off the streets, because that's a big thing where we're from. And, coming back into the school, we're teaching social justice. And, who am I, teaching them about themselves. But they feel hopeless, sometimes going back into the neighborhoods and knowing that they're going to face something when they leave their safe haven at YCCS West. So I think that's an obstacle for us as a school, because it seems like sometimes we're skating uphill.
Thank you. Let's stick with that theme for just a little bit. And by the way, you all are being very polite. If you have anything you want to add to any of these, I know I can see the wheels spinning. Feel free to jump in and add anything. But let's stick with that theme that Mr. King talked about a little bit, some of those challenges with students. I loved Dr. Sweeney mentioned earlier trying to connect these issues to both the grown-ups, the faculty and staff, but also the kids. And right now, when it comes to working with kids, we've got a lot of competing ideas. You know, we have a lot of things that are vying for their attention. And then we also have, in a lot of cases, that sense of hopelessness that Mr. King suggested. What are your suggestions to really try to connect with kids and help them, one, keep their attention in this very digital, very virtual world that we're in, but two, kind of inspire messages of hope amidst areas that may feel hopeless. Wondered if maybe we could hear from Mr. King first, then Dr. Sweeney, then Ms. Beard.
You know, I always think, you know, you got to keep the student in mind, right? And how they think. So we have this acronym that we use at the school, WIFM, what's in it for me? And the students always want to know what's in it for them. So the way that we hook our students to really, you know, buy into what we're trying to offer first and foremost, are internships. They love working and getting credit for working. And also they love, you know, getting paid to help out the home front. So the way we're connecting with the students, you know, if they engage in their education, we can show that they're really responsible to our donors and our vendors that's helping us out with job placements. So students buy into that big time because they love working. Another thing is we have from our social justice department, our English and audio video production teacher that's going out in the community working with the students, videotaping the protests, interviewing folks, doing podcasts, and they get paid for doing that and also earning credit. So those are some of the ways we're working with our students to make that connection, and also using curriculum like WhyTry in our advisory space. The students love that. I mean, we have the most engagement on Tuesday and Thursday using WhyTry. So thank you guys.
Oh, you bet. And I'm going to shout you out. One thing that I've had the chance to visit and listen with you several times. And when I talk about you being an expert at engagement, that's not hyperbole. And you even just kind of tipped your hand a little bit about one of the things I think you're really sensitive to is figuring out how to kind of double dip and give kids the opportunity to do the stuff that's really relevant and important to them, but also help them get credit for doing that, whether that's in the form of compensation for work or credits towards graduation. And that's always impressed me within your model. And I think it's really, really brilliant. Let's go. I think we said Dr. Sweeney next and then Ms. Beard.
Yeah, so first off, students need to see themselves in the curriculum. I think that has to be a priority. So if we're talking about some of these equity issues and some of our Black and brown students that have endured racial trauma, they need to be able to see themselves in that curriculum. Jason, I don't know if you're able to show a couple of those slides, but if you could show slide 17.
Yep.
That'd be awesome. This is from a book that just came out. Yeah.
Here, I'm just going, you said 17?
Yep.
Okay.
So just so you guys know, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and Louisville is where Breonna Taylor is also from, right? So there's just been a lot of unrest in our city, and of course through our country, through the world, and our students need to talk about it, right? We need to provide safe spaces for them to talk about it. So take a look at this. This is a book that just came out from two of the folks that were part of the Exonerated Five. But imagine reading this with your students, all because we were in the wrong place, we were in the wrong skins, we were in the wrong time, we were in the wrong bodies, we were in the wrong country, we're in the wrong. All because they were in the right place, they were in the right skins, they were in the right time, they were in the right body, they were in the right country, they were in the right. So offering opportunities to read text like this really becomes a conversation starter, right? You can have these conversations within the academic core content classes. You can certainly have them within your tier one. If you're a mental health professional, right? Providing multi-tiered systems of support. So if you're doing your tier 1 lessons, which I submit to you, all of our mental health professionals should be doing, you should all be getting into the classrooms and making sure that people know who you are, know the supports that you provide, and then also so that you can kind of normalize behavior, but you're able to use different texts like you see on your screen right now in order to kind of normalize what people are feeling and to allow them to recognize that other people are dealing with very similar things that they are. I used to do small counseling groups, and in some of those small counseling groups, we would have like, I would have a group of like eight African-American boys who came from single family households, right? They were getting in a lot of trouble. Well, what we would do is we would use a text like this, or we would use a song. They would annotate that song, or they would annotate that text. And then I would ask them, so what stood out to you? What lyric or what part of this text stood out to you? And then they were able to circle or underline, and they were able to say, well, when they said, we were in the wrong country, or we were in the wrong bodies, that really stuck out to me. And it reminds me of this time that I experienced feeling like just because the color of my skin, I was being stereotyped or I was being discriminated against. And then another young man would say, oh my gosh, holy crap, I didn't realize that you have had a similar experience than me. I thought I was the only one. So this serves as kind of a foundation to that. If you can go to slide 16, Jason. I talked a little bit earlier about, yeah, that's it. I talked a little bit earlier about this idea of critical pedagogy. So asking your students to get involved, right? Your students want, I can't tell you how important it is to empower them to use their voice. And if you can say to your students, your voice is so important that I want you to help our entire school or our entire community solve some problems. Right, so I told you a little bit about ABC data, for instance. I told you that behavioral referrals could be one data set that you look at. Well, you could actually show your students, potentially in like your tier 2, so some of your smaller groups, you could show those students, this is our behavior data for my school X, Y, or Z. For your school, this is the data, all right? You can have them research the problem. So right now I see that people that look like me are disproportionately getting more and more office referrals or behavioral referrals than anybody else. Is this happening throughout my state? Is this happening throughout the country? Okay, then they can develop this collective plan, action plan to address the problem. Next, they can implement the collective plan of action. And finally, they can evaluate the action, assess its efficacy, and re-examine the state of the problem. So you can get students involved in this process and empower them to have their voice and share their voice and actually help you solve problems. Okay, so you can take that, you can stop the screen share. There were just a couple other things that I wanted to tell you. So if you're looking at this from that multi-tiered system of support, you're doing your tier 1, so you're working on behalf of all students. If you're an academic or content teacher, you're making sure that students see themselves through the curriculum. If you're doing your tier 2, your small groups or your individual school counseling, you're asking questions, you're empowering, you're creating safe spaces so that everybody can be part of the conversation and part of the solution.
Awesome, thank you. Ms. Beard.
Oh my, everybody has touched on everything pretty much that I had in mind, but one of the things I wanted to say was this. If you are a leader or an individual that's in a position to look at equity policies or create equity policies in your district, that is something that is to be focused on as well. Because if you can change a policy that best fits every student, why not do that or look at doing that as a possibility? The other thing is children don't need sympathy, they need empathy, but not sympathy. When they come into our classrooms or in our counseling sessions, they need to know that they are valued, they are respected, and that they have a purpose in life. That's what got me over and through crisis situations as a child, because my life was very traumatic at times. In crisis situation, sometimes wanting to commit suicide because I didn't feel like I had a purpose in life. So that when we can show children that we love them and care about them, yet having some sympathy, but that not being the main focal point. Empathy, where you understand what they're going through, but letting them know that they are in a safe environment where they can come in and they can learn despite the traumatic things that they might be going through. But even in that trauma, providing them what they need, whether it's food, a clothes closet where they can put on decent clothes, where they feel like they can be a part of the setting that they're in, it makes a difference in a child's life. So sympathy, yes, some sympathy, but empathy has to be above that so that children will know that you care about them and they will learn. When a teacher truly cares, when people show that they care, even though they may be going through trauma, guess what? You can make a difference in the lives of a child when you do that. And then the other thing I wanted to say, having all the voices at the table. Why not have an equity committee that includes students, include counselors, include teachers, administrators, all the stakeholders sitting at the table where everybody has a voice to share those concerns, where there are no assumptions. I can't do the right things for you if I don't really know you or know what you need. It is about building relationships. And that's very, very important if we're going to move forward with the things that we're concerned about, making sure everything is done through the equity lens. That's going to be very important, building those relationships going forward. Small steps, well, we've got to begin somewhere. It may be one thing, but create that strategic plan out of that equity committee. That strategic plan will have steps. You begin small, but guess what? Know you have a target direction. You know where you're going and how you're going to get there, putting all your resources and everything that you need to get those things done. There are people in the business communities right now. If we called upon them and asked them for help, because they care about children and they care about their businesses, because they know the children coming out of our school systems or will be a part of possibly their business. So of course they want the best. So guess what? Many of them will share their resources to help schools, counselors, people that are focused on helping children. They will do what they can do to try to assist in that way.
Thank you so much. I think that concept of relationships has probably been one of the really strong points that I think attracted us organizationally and individually to one another, that started kind of our shared passion with one another towards helping kids and this common approach. And so I think thematically, I think it would be helpful to kind of stay on that idea, and maybe if you could share your thoughts on what you think the connection is between equity and hope. There's kind of this collective sense of dread and hopelessness right now that I think both students and educators and faculty and staff are all feeling, and it's magnified, I think, by the pandemic situation that we're in, and then all of the strife that we're witnessing throughout the country. What do you see as the connection between hope and equity? And maybe we can go, let's go, Ms. Beard, Mr. King, Dr. Sweeney.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say was dealing with the spirit of fear. Right now, Jason, there is a spirit of fear that has gripped this country and gripped leaders and individuals that deal with children on a regular basis, to the point where they feel paralyzed, as if they can't move forward in the midst of all of this. I was in the media for about 30 years, and the media doesn't help the matter very much, because when we watch those things pan out before us, then it creates a certain emotion and feeling in us, to the point where I want to say something, but I don't know what to say. I don't want to offend anybody. Nobody's talking. Nobody wants to communicate. But yet all these issues are looming before us, and we know they need to be addressed. But nobody wants to really step out there out of fear that their peers will criticize them for what they're about to do or what they're about to say, or even their race will be critical of what they're wanting to do to bring equity in a situation or in an environment to make sure children are taken care of. Because see, at the end of the day, it's not about us anyway. It's about the children. And that's where our focus should always be, not on ourselves. Sometimes we have to do things that are uncomfortable in order to make a difference and make a change. Change is not always easy, but if we focus on why we do what we do, when we focus in on the children in everything that we do, then it becomes easier for us. Sometimes I have to turn the TV off. I won't even watch what's going on and playing out before me, because I know emotionally I get charged because of that, and it will make me not make the right decisions sometimes in what I need to do, because I can't do it emotionally. I've got to step out of my emotions for a minute and really look at the issue to create and come up with the best plan or best solutions in order to create that environment to get that conversation started. And that's what leaders have to focus on, not focus on everything blowing up around you. We got to stay laser focused, be creative, be adaptive, be transformative in order to do the things that we need to do to make a difference in the lives of children.
Thank you so much. Mr. King.
Yes. What was that? So when I think about equity and hope and equity, I think you have to have hope in order to get to equity. I just think about, people usually say you got to see it to believe it. I think believing it, you have to believe things to, actually get it. So I think about Martin Luther King and his vision, his dream of, one day everyone, being equal, treated equally. And if he never dreamt that, if he never galvanized people, if he never had hope, it would be really sad to think about what would be going on today. Today, it's worse right now than it has been over the last, 10 years with what's been going on in the country. But what I'm trying to get at is just imagine all the strides that we have made as a country, as a world, because Martin Luther King had hope. He had a vision, and he galvanized people to actually start to believe it. And I think as a result, we've seen some strides happen in this country. So I think that's the connection between hope and equity from my standpoint, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate
you got to have
that.
hope before you get equity.
Dr. Sweeney.
Yeah, I think well done by Miranda and Early. I think that you have to have hope. You have to provide hope. I think that's our biggest goals as educators, is providing hope for students. And I think we do that through the relationships that Miranda and Early spoke about earlier. I think that by showing unconditional positive regard, we are providing hope. And also by showing that we're willing to have some of these conversations and that we do in fact see our traditionally marginalized students as individuals who need our help and need our love and need our support, I think we are providing hope. And as a result, we can provide progress in our equity work.
Thank you so much. When I hear you say unconditional positive regard, you're speaking to my school psychologist heart, who's a fan of that client-centered approach. I just want to add one piece on hope. So organizationally, the WhyTry organization that I represent, we have a resilience and a social emotional learning curriculum. And within our resilience model, we've identified individual sources of resilience that really impact individuals' ability and their relationship to their challenges and how they deal with challenges. And one of our key sources of resilience is a thing we call rock bottom resilience that's really connected specifically to hope. And hope and resilience have an interesting relationship when you start to dig into it. Hopelessness destroys resilience. Hopelessness and resilience have a hard time coexisting in the same body. And so when hopelessness creeps into a person, it starts to kind of destroy that resilience, and then it really negatively impacts their ability to deal with adversity and challenges. And so anytime we can boost and increase hope, then I think we're helping increase resilience. And as I look at these equity issues, I think that's one of the really, really destructive pieces about them is when those equity issues exist long-term, perpetually across generations, they really start to destroy hope in individuals. And when that hope dies, it can really impact resilience in a negative way. And so I think there's a really strong connection with everything you're saying. And then we know the impact that relationships have on hope as well.
Jason, if I may, I wanted to just speak a little bit about relational resilience as well.
Please.
You know, I'm thinking about the students that would come to my office when things happen in our community and happen in our society that just scared them. You know, this was a really, really scary summer for a lot of our students. And I think that relational resilience can be taught by everybody on this call, right? By showing people that, hey, we see you. We might not have the answer for you, but we care enough to listen and to see you and to care for you. I think that's going to go a long way. And I also want people on this call to think about we often talk in education about being trauma informed, which is, as we know, is extraordinarily important. But I also want people on this call to have a healing centered approach, right? So instead of saying what's wrong with you, we know that we should say what's happened to you. But I want to take it a step further, and I want you to ask your students, what's wrong with you? Ask them, what's wrong with you? What are your character strengths? I would take a look at different character strengths that youth have, show them charts, and I would have them choose the character strength that they most connect to. And then whenever something happens, you can say, hey, again, I'm here for you. I love you. I support you. I care for you. But I want you to also know, so there's that relational resilience I was talking about a little bit ago. But I also want you to know, we've talked about this. And even though this is really, really challenging and this is really, really hard, you are going to be able to overcome it, and you are going to be able to become resilient because of those strengths that you possess.
Thank you so much.
And I think, Jason, part of that is being open and honest too, keeping the lines of communications open between people who may not look like each other. But I feel sad when people that don't look like me are afraid to approach me to ask why certain things are the way they are, because they truly don't understand. Until you have walked in a person's shoes, some of the shoes of the children that we serve and that we deal with on a regular basis, then how will you really know how to deal with them unless somebody's communicating what those needs are? See, we were caught off guard by COVID-19, this pandemic. I'll tell you one key area: technology. We have over 20 million families. Now, this is according to the Federal Communications Commission. 20 million families across this country with no form of technology or internet in their homes. What do you do as leadership to make sure equity is there and those children are taken care of? Well, some districts and some schools across this country have used buses as hotspots. They've set them up as centers where children can go on the bus to do their homework, because guess what? They can't afford computers. They don't have access to these things. And then some districts say, well, we gave them notebooks or computers, but guess what? You forgot. Do they know how to use those things? What about professional development for the teachers that have to teach children online now, distance learning? You know, all those things we have to sit down and talk about to make sure the equity is there. It's communications, the line of communications, not being afraid to talk about issues, because for every issue, there is a solution.
Thank you so much. This is incredible. What I want to pivot over to now is ask you all for advice. I think you all have expressed some amazing things you've been doing, and a lot of it I think has involved some important and difficult conversations. A lot of people in the chat and in the questions have expressed a desire to learn what specifically they can do. We talk about equity sometimes, and it's this big idea, but we don't necessarily have a specific vehicle for it, or we don't know where to start. And then I think in a lot of cases, people are really nervous to approach it. And so what I was wondering if you could address is any specific tips or advice that you would offer to people to help get these conversations going. And I'm going to even ask you if you'd be willing to speak to people that are in the majority and let them know what they can do. I think there's a lot of people that are really nervous about how to approach this topic and this conversation. And any advice that you would offer to help out, I think would be really appreciated. Maybe we could start with Mr. King, then go Miss Beard, and then go Dr. Sweeney.
Yeah, I think the first thing that pops in mind, you have to be courageous. And I know we keep saying courageous conversations, but I think that's half the battle, just having the courage to be open and open-minded, just be wide open to talking about any and everything. And then the other part is know that it's going to take work. It's not just a one and done training or diversity sensitivity training. It takes much more. It takes researching and going in the weeds to try to see what's out there, what's going on, why things the way they are. So, my advice would be, those simple things, one, be, courageous, be open-minded, and, be willing to actually do the work and research to actually get out there and get in the weeds to see what's going on. Because I think a lot of people are, including myself, brainwashed by the media, and never get the opportunity to go out and see some of the beauty, even in some of the broken down communities that we come from and you see our cities built on. There's still beauty out there. And I think when people can see the beauty that's out there and focus on what's right versus what's wrong, me included, I think we can actually start making progress.
Thank you. Ms. Beard.
I was going to say, one of the things I wanted to say was, don't make assumptions, get the facts, talk to people. Cultural proficiency is important, training for the teams of people that are working with students or with children. As Mr. King said, go into some of the communities, boots on the ground, to really see how children are living and see their families. Because some of the children that we're dealing with, their families truly love them. But we have to do things on purpose to get that family engaged in certain things. For example, if I have a parent-teacher conference at 5 o'clock in the evening, half of my parents may not be able to come. So my assumption is they don't care about their children. So why should I really care? Now, I'm just saying that, putting it out there. The fact is they do. 5 o'clock is not a good time for them because they're working 2 jobs, trying to put food on the table for their children. And they can't come at 5 o'clock in the evening. They're not communicating that to you. You're not communicating with them because the assumption is there that you don't care. But the truth is they really do. They're just trying to make ends meet. They're not on welfare. They are a working class family. So we have to turn around and do things on purpose to make sure everybody has that opportunity. Even if our set time is at 5, we may want to go with set up a time for some parents to do one-on-one because they can't come at that set time. So it's doing things on purpose to make sure certain things happen. But unless we do that and take action and not be afraid to take those actions, then we sometimes are at a stalemate or a standstill. We can sit in the stands and look at the game going on, or we can get in the game. That doesn't mean we won't get hit, we won't get tackled, but guess what? You get back up again. We've got to try and try even harder, even if in trying we make a few mistakes. But don't be afraid of making mistakes trying to do the right thing, but talking to the key people that we need to talk to make sure we are well informed to make the right decisions, using data to make those informed decisions.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Sweeney, I know you've been working on this for quite a while. What are your thoughts on how we can get these going in an effective way?
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to give you some tools. So first and foremost, we know that educators are super overwhelmed with just how much is out there right now. Okay, so what we've done at the Kentucky Department of Education, we've created really succinct documents that help guide these conversations. So this is one of them, right? This literally just helps you know what steps can I take to facilitate conversations about race-based stress and trauma. And then this other one, this is called Where Am I? Racial Equity SEL cards. I love this. So let's just look at one of the 5 CASEL social emotional competencies, right? So let's just look at this. This is going to help your school district do self-reflection, professional development. It can be an opener for professional developments as well. But if you're like, well, we know these conversations need to happen, but where in the world do we start? Well, here's a cool tool. Just looking at one of the competencies, how do you help students develop a sense of pride in their racial identity? Right? So you're talking to your staff about that, and you're asking your teachers about that, asking your principal about that, asking your mental health professionals about that. How do we collectively and individually within our practice do these things? So this kind of gives you another foundational point to start conversations. And then I'm going to show you just a couple other things that I think are really cool. And again, this isn't to overwhelm, but this is really to just to show you that there are just a few things out there that you can do to really start these conversations. So there's this cool, courageous conversations about race protocol. And this protocol walks you through literally 4 steps. So you want to have these conversations. If you can make these 4 commitments, then that's going to help you through them. Okay. Sorry, not trying to play video right now. There's also this cool continuum on becoming an anti-racist multicultural organization. So we have to also look at our systems, right? We can't just look at the individuals within our schools and say, well, we need you to make sure that equity is a priority. We've got to look at our systems. What do our schools look like? What do our districts look like? Are they anti-racist? If not, let's figure out where we are on this continuum and what are some steps that we can do to progress in our efforts. Okay, so that's there as well. And then this is simple. This is super simple, right? Have you ever spent a day in the life of some of your most underprivileged students? So I suggest taking a student schedule, a traditionally marginalized student, whether they're a special education student, whether they're a Black and brown student, whether they're a poor student, and follow them. Don't follow them around, but follow their schedule and see what is a day in the life like for that student. So again, just some super, some quick options for you to take a look at in terms of resources that I think will be helpful.
Thank you so much. The chat box is blowing up a little bit. People are asking about how to access some of those. I don't know if all of those.
Yeah. I'll put the links in.
Okay, so Dr. Sweeney will put those in the chat tool, and then if you want to email those to me, we'll send a follow-up email out with info on the recording for this, and we'll make sure to include any links that we have as well. Mr. King, Ms. Beard, do you have any resources or anything that any practical advice that you might offer up as well that might be helpful?
Well, I know the National School Boards Association has a site. You could go to that site and pull up equity information. There is a Department of Equity with the National School Boards Association. Virginia Jacobs is the individual to contact there, who will be very instrumental in helping to provide some information to you. Also, your state associations across the country will share information with you as well. That will be very helpful going forward to assist with your equity issues and concerns, especially dealing with policies changing your focal point when it comes to policies and setting those policies to make sure, they're equitable in terms of what we do. Those are some key issues there, or areas or contacts, National School Boards Association, as well as your state association for school boards that can help you. But, it's not just school boards. They will share this information with anyone who's willing to make contact with them to get that information.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yes, I've been involved in several equity trainings over the last 3 to 4 months. And I would actually send you that file so we can share with the folks at the end of the presentation. So outside of that, I have things that, I have been exposed to from the city level, Jason, that I can share with you as well, that you can attach. So okay. Both in the school level, from our PD standpoint, that we had professional people like Gallup come in and train the group, and then the stuff that we're getting from the district level.
Awesome. Thank you. So what we'll do, we'll send a follow-up email out to everybody that registered for this, and we'll have links to the resources that have been discussed and shared. And we'll also get a link to the video so that you can share this because we recognize that this is going to be a starting point for a lot of people. We want this to be a starting point to get these important conversations going. We're about getting close to the end of time. What I wish we had twice as much time, but what I would love to hear, because as an educator, this was something I always appreciated. It's easy to get bogged down with all the heavy things that we're dealing with. I was wondering if each of you could just share something that's giving you hope right now. What's giving you hope amidst all these challenges that we've discussed? That we can really look forward to get us through this, to kind of boost our own hope. And then I think we'll wrap it up. Maybe we could go, let's go Mr. King, Dr. Sweeney, Miss Beard.
Yeah. So Jason, I'm always amazed how resilient young people are. In particular, my students that I work with at the school for the last 4 years, I have seen students, across the country when I was working for K-12, but I kind of moved away from that over the years, and I came back locally to work, hands-on with the student and the families and the team. And, I remember when this thing hit us back in March, I did not think that we would have the 90, because we're averaging a 90, 94, 96% graduation rate. And I did not think we would make that this year. And it was a struggle to engage students, go from the face-to-face model to blended it in a fully virtual model. And they proved me wrong. I mean, we had the 90, almost 95% graduation rate this year. So I'm just amazed how resilient they are. And when it's time for them to show up, they show up. And it's just amazing to sit back and learn and watch from the young people these days. It's crazy. So I'm hopeful about our children, our kids. That's going to be our future. They're going to be okay, and they'll probably be better than us.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sweeney.
Yeah, so I come from an urban school district, and I've been so excited about some of the rural school districts that are unnecessarily stereotyped far too often, about how open they've been about wanting to do this work. I had two superintendents call from Western Kentucky, and they said, we're in small rural districts, and there was recently a peaceful protest on one side of the street, and on the other side there were Confederate flags, and there was cussing, and there was spitting, et cetera, and it was just really nasty. But what they said next was so profound. They said, we realize that our school, our students, once they graduate from our school, once they've had our education, they get to choose which side of the street they're on. And we want to make sure that they choose the right one. So now we've got more and more people that are saying, all right, this has gone on far too long. It's time to have some real, authentic conversations. That's absolutely what's given me hope. Oh, and I will also say, my school district, my home district is Jefferson County Public Schools, which is one of the biggest districts in the country. And they're amazing. They are ensuring that all educators in their district read 4 books on equity. I'm reading one of them that's called So You Want to Talk About Race, which is just mind-blowing, amazing. So that's also giving me hope. The fact that such a large school district in our state is willing to do this work and equip and make sure that their educators are equipped to have courageous conversations.
Thank you so much. Could you say the name of that book again? A couple people have asked.
Yes, it's called So You Want to Talk About Race.
Thank you. Ms. Beard.
Equity is not by luck or chance. It's on purpose for purpose. That's what's giving me hope, seeing leaders across this country coming together, not only talking about equity issues and their concerns, but actually taking action. And that's what it's going to take. They're putting their politics aside and not letting that interfere with the work that's at hand. They're looking at people from not their gender, not their race, not their socioeconomic status, and putting them in a certain category. Many of them are saying when children come to us, we're looking at them just as kids who need help, and we are here as a resource to make sure those needs are met. That's what gives me hope. That's why I'm passionate about what I do and what I say, because I see the desire, I see the passion of others out there who want to do what's right, despite what we may be seeing in the media that may want us to think otherwise. But there are people really working hard to try to make a difference in the lives of children. I see children like mustard seeds. In that seed is potential and destiny. When they come into our environments, it should be a safe environment where they can learn, where the potential that's on the inside of them can be pulled out to do something awesome and great. Because every child was born with something significant they were supposed to do in this earth. So it's about us serving them and then them in turn serving us. But it's about us working together, and that's what it's all about. That courageous conversation, transformational leadership, not being afraid to talk about these issues, not being offended when we say things that people may not sometimes understand, but asking questions and communicating. That is so important, and that's what gives me hope across this country.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. This has been incredible. Do any of you have any parting thoughts, anything that you realized you wanted to say you didn't before we shut this down?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Miranda, sorry. I would echo what Miranda said. Society would have you, and the media would have you believe that the black and brown people are, honestly, they've been dehumanized by society and media. But we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to celebrate our black and brown students and go out of our way to celebrate them daily. You know, show them that they do have the resilience, that they can overcome, that they do have power, that they are significant people, and that we do love them.
Thank you.
Use your gift, your talents, and your ability to make a difference. Your gift is for other people. It's really not for you. So sometimes we have to get outside ourselves, overcome fear in order to do what is right. Because equity is just, as I said earlier, doing what is right and best for individuals that need our help and need resources. And channeling Title I funds, looking at your budget, looking at everything, all your resources, to make sure those resources are channeled in the right place. And when we do that, you can sleep at night. I know I could sleep at night as a board member, knowing in my heart that I did what was right and best, even if I made mistakes sometimes in that process of trying to do what's right. but don't let fear paralyze you and stop you from moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yeah, so just going right from Miranda, just this whole thing about fear and being courageous. I think that's like step one. And we're talking about public speaking and, practice and make perfect, and you can kind of get rid of fear. I think it's the same thing with this whole thing. The more that you do the work, more you get involved and get in the weeds of what's going on, I think the fear would dissipate. It would dissipate, and you and me can actually coexist, and we can contribute to this world and actually lead the best possible future for our kids. So I would, stress the courageous conversations and being able to just step up, do the work. It is work to get to know and learn about all cultures in order to level the playing field. So be courageous. That's what I would say at the end of the day. Be courageous, and it will be all right. We can get through this together.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We're going to put contact information up for our panelists in a minute. I wasn't going to say anything. My heart's really full. I just want to thank our panelists, first of all, give them all a round of applause. And then I was thinking about what gives me hope. And I'm not just an educator, I'm a parent. I have 5 children in the public education system. And the thing that gives me hope is my opportunity. I'm going to try not to get emotional there. My opportunity to engage with educators and mental health professionals throughout the country. The best humans in the world get into this because they all have a common desire to help kids. And so I hope these messages today will boost all of your hope. And I want you to know you're making a difference. All of you are making more of a difference than you may think you are in these unprecedented times. Keep fighting the good fight and take these conversations and build on them and continue to make a difference in your communities. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, huge thank you to our panelists. I'm a better person for my opportunity to affiliate with all of you. And that's all we've got. The people are clamoring for a part 2. We'll have to discuss this offline and see what we can do.
Jason, this is huge. This is so big that an hour really with 4 people, it doesn't do it real justice. I wanted to do a shout out for WhyTry, because WhyTry, the organization, has touched millions and millions of children across the country, and staff members who are looking for equity solutions. WhyTry is one of those equity solutions that can help. Now, WhyTry didn't pay me to say this, but I know the work and I believe in the work that the organization is doing. So that may be one area for people to reach out as well. I wanted to share that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you all. I've got contact information for how people can look up information on WhyTry, how they can get in contact with all of you. And that's all we've got today. Thank you, everybody.